Sister Margaret walked slowly down the long hallway of St. Mary's Community Center. Her black shoes made soft clicking sounds on the old wooden floor. She was 82 years old and had been a nun for 60 years. Her back was bent from age, but her eyes still sparkled with life. The community center was having a special music night. People from all over the town had come to listen to local musicians play. Sister Margaret had heard about it from the other nuns at her convent. She wanted to come and listen to the beautiful music. She wore her simple black habit with a white collar. Her gray hair was hidden under her white veil. In her wrinkled hands she carried a small black purse. She had walked 3 blocks from the convent to get here. The evening air was cool and fresh. When Sister Margaret entered the main hall, she saw many people sitting in chairs. There were families with children, young couples, and older people like herself. Everyone was talking and laughing. The room felt warm and friendly. At the front of the room stood a beautiful black piano. It was a grand piano with shiny keys that reflected the lights above. Sister Margaret stopped walking when she saw it. Her heart began to beat faster. She had not seen a piano like this in many, many years. A young man in a suit was standing next to the piano. He was the person organizing the music night. His name was David, and he was 28 years old. He looked around the room and smiled at all the people who had come. "Good evening, everyone," David said into a microphone. "Welcome to our community music night. We have many talented people here tonight who will play for us." Sister Margaret found an empty chair in the back row. She sat down carefully and folded her hands in her lap. She was excited to hear the music, but something else was happening in her heart. Looking at that piano brought back so many memories. When Sister Margaret was a little girl, her name was Mary Catherine O'Brien. She lived in a small house with her mother, father, and 3 brothers. Her family did not have much money, but they had an old piano in their living room. Mary Catherine's grandmother had given it to them before she died. Every day after school, little Mary Catherine would run to the piano. She would sit on the wooden bench and place her small fingers on the keys. She did not know how to read music, but she could play beautiful songs. Just by listening and feeling the music in her heart, her mother would stand in the kitchen doorway and listen. Sometimes tears would come to her eyes because the music was so beautiful. "Mary Catherine," her mother would say, "you have a gift from God." Mary Catherine loved the piano more than anything else in the world. She would play for hours and hours. She played happy songs when she felt joy. She played sad songs when she felt lonely. The piano was her best friend and her way of talking to God. When Mary Catherine was 16 years old, a terrible thing happened. Her father lost his job at the factory. The family had no money to buy food or pay for their house. They had to sell everything they owned, including the piano. Mary Catherine cried for days when the men came to take her piano away. She watched from the window as they loaded it onto a truck. She felt like part of her heart was being taken away too. 2 years later, Mary Catherine made a big decision. She decided to become a nun. She felt that God was calling her to serve Him and help other people. She went to the convent and began her new life as Sister Margaret. In the convent, there was no piano. The nuns sang hymns together, but there was no music like the music Sister Margaret remembered from her childhood. She missed playing the piano every single day, but she never complained. She believed that God had other plans for her. For 60 years, Sister Margaret served God and helped people. She worked in hospitals, taking care of sick people. She taught children in schools. She helped feed hungry families. She was always kind and gentle, and people loved her, but in her heart, she never forgot about the piano. Sometimes at night she would close her eyes and remember the feeling of the keys under her fingers. She would remember the beautiful music that used to flow from her hands. She wondered if she could still play after so many years. Now, sitting in the community center, Sister Margaret stared at the grand piano. Her old fingers moved slightly as if they were remembering how to play. She felt nervous and excited at the same time. The first performer was a teenage girl who played the violin. She was very good, and everyone clapped loudly. Then a man sang a song while playing a guitar. After him, two children played flutes together. Sister Margaret enjoyed all the music, but she could not stop looking at the piano. No one had played it yet. It sat there waiting, beautiful and silent. During a break, David the organizer walked around the room talking to people. He wanted to make sure everyone was having a good time. When he saw Sister Margaret sitting alone in the back, he walked over to her. "Hello, sister," David said with a smile. "Are you enjoying the music tonight?" "Oh yes," Sister Margaret replied. "It is very beautiful. Thank you for organizing this wonderful evening." David noticed that Sister Margaret kept looking at the piano. "Are you a musician, sister?" he asked. Sister Margaret's cheeks turned pink. She felt embarrassed. "Oh no," she said quietly. "I used to play piano when I was very young, but that was a long time ago. I am sure I have forgotten everything." David's eyes lit up. "Would you like to play something for us tonight?" he asked. Sister Margaret's heart jumped. The idea scared her and excited her at the same time. "Oh no," she said, shaking her head. "I could not do that. I am too old, and I have not played in 60 years. People would laugh at me." "No one would laugh," David said kindly. "This is a community night. Everyone is welcome to share their music, no matter what level they are." Sister Margaret looked at the piano again. Part of her wanted to try, but another part of her was very afraid. What if she had forgotten how to play? What if her old fingers did not work anymore? What if she embarrassed herself in front of all these people? "I do not think so," she said softly. "But thank you for asking." David smiled and patted her shoulder gently. "The offer is always open, sister. If you change your mind, just let me know." As David walked away, Sister Margaret felt something stirring in her heart. The piano seemed to be calling to her, just like it had when she was little Mary Catherine O'Brien. The music night continued with more performers. A group of teenagers sang a modern song together. An older man played jazz on a saxophone. Each performance was met with warm applause from the audience. Sister Margaret watched and listened, but her mind kept wandering to thoughts of the piano. She remembered how it felt to create music with her own hands. She remembered the joy that filled her heart when beautiful melodies flowed from her fingers. During another break, a woman sitting next to Sister Margaret started talking to her. The woman's name was Linda, and she was about 50 years old. She had brought her daughter to perform that night. "My daughter Emma played the violin earlier," Linda said proudly. "She has been taking lessons for 3 years. She played beautifully," Sister Margaret replied. "You must be very proud of her." "I am," Linda said. "Music is so important for children." "Do you have any musical background, sister?" Sister Margaret hesitated. "I used to play piano many years ago, but I stopped when I became a nun." Linda's face lit up with interest. "How wonderful. Have you thought about playing again?" "My church has a piano, and we are always looking for people to play during our services." "Oh, I could not," Sister Margaret said quickly. "I am much too old and out of practice." "Nonsense," Linda said. "Music never really leaves you. It stays in your heart and in your hands. My grandmother was a pianist, and she played until she was 95 years old." Sister Margaret felt touched by Linda's kindness, but she still felt too nervous to consider playing. The thought of sitting at a piano in front of people made her hands shake. As the evening went on, more people performed. Sister Margaret noticed that not all of them were perfect musicians. Some made small mistakes, but the audience was always supportive and encouraging. Everyone seemed to understand that this was about sharing music and bringing people together, not about being perfect. Near the end of the program, David announced that there was time for one more performer. He looked around the room to see if anyone else wanted to play. "Anyone else who would like to share some music with us tonight?" he asked. The room was quiet. Most people had already performed or were not musicians. Sister Margaret felt her heart beating faster. This was her last chance to play the piano, but she was still too afraid. A young boy in the front row raised his hand. "My grandma wants to play, but she is too shy," he said loudly. Everyone turned to look at the boy's grandmother, who was sitting next to him. She was about 70 years old and had silver hair. Her face turned red with embarrassment. "Tommy," she whispered to her grandson. "I told you not to say anything," but David walked over to her with a smile. "Would you like to play for us?" he asked gently. The grandmother looked nervous, just like Sister Margaret felt. "I only know one song," she said quietly, "and I might make mistakes." "That's perfectly fine," David said. "We would love to hear whatever you would like to play." The grandmother stood up slowly and walked to the piano. Her hands were shaking as she sat down on the bench. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play Amazing Grace. Sister Margaret watched with tears in her eyes. The grandmother's playing was simple and not perfect, but it was full of love and emotion. The whole room was silent, listening to the beautiful hymn Dop. When the grandmother finished, everyone clapped loudly. Some people had tears in their eyes. The grandmother smiled widely and looked so happy and proud of herself. As she walked back to her seat, she stopped next to Sister Margaret. "It felt so good to play again," she whispered. "I had not touched a piano in 5 years." Sister Margaret felt something change inside her heart. Watching the grandmother play had shown her something important. It was not about being perfect or young or professional. It was about sharing the music that lived inside her heart. David was about to announce the end of the program when Sister Margaret suddenly stood up. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to walk forward. "Excuse me," she said in a quiet voice. David looked surprised and pleased. "Yes, sister? I would like to play something, if that is still possible," Sister Margaret said. Her voice was shaking, but she felt determined. The room became very quiet. Everyone turned to look at the elderly nun walking toward the piano. Some people whispered to each other, wondering what she would play. David smiled warmly. "Of course, sister, we would be honored to hear you play." Sister Margaret's hands were trembling as she approached the piano bench. She had not sat at a piano in 60 years. What if her fingers did not remember what to do? What if she embarrassed herself in the convent? But as she sat down on the bench, something magical happened. The piano felt familiar, like an old friend, welcoming her home. She placed her wrinkled hands on the keys and felt a warmth spread through her fingers. Sister Margaret closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She said a silent prayer, asking God to help her share the music that had been locked away in her heart for so many years. She opened her eyes and looked out at the audience. All the faces were looking at her with kindness and expectation. She saw Linda, who smiled and nodded encouragingly. She saw the grandmother who had just played, giving her a thumbs up. She saw David, who looked excited to hear what she would do. Sister Margaret turned back to the piano keys. For a moment she did not know what to play. Then slowly a melody came to her mind. It was a song she had learned as a child, a beautiful hymn that her mother used to love. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play, "How Great Thou Art." The first notes were soft and uncertain. Sister Margaret's fingers felt stiff after so many years away from the piano. But as she continued to play, something wonderful began to happen. The music started to flow more easily. Her fingers began to remember the movements they had known so well 60 years ago. The stiffness melted away, and her hands began to dance across the keys like they had when she was young Mary Catherine O'Brien. The audience sat in complete silence, mesmerized by what they were hearing. This was not just piano playing. This was something much more special. Sister Margaret's playing grew stronger and more confident with each note. She added beautiful harmonies and gentle decorations to the melody. Her face changed as she played. The worry and nervousness disappeared, replaced by pure joy and peace. As the music filled the room, people began to feel something very special happening. Some had tears in their eyes. Others sat with their mouths open in amazement. Even the children in the audience sat perfectly still, captured by the beauty of the music. Sister Margaret was no longer thinking about her age or her fears. She was lost in the music, connected to God and to the deepest part of her soul. The piano was singing under her hands, telling the story of a lifetime of faith, love, and sacrifice. As Sister Margaret continued to play "How Great Thou Art," the music seemed to transform the entire room. What had started as a simple community music night had become something extraordinary. The elderly nun's fingers moved across the keys with grace and skill that amazed everyone watching. The hymn reached its most powerful moment, and Sister Margaret's playing grew even more beautiful. She added runs and flourishes that she remembered from her childhood. Her hands seemed to have a life of their own, creating music that touched every heart in the room. When the hymn ended, there was complete silence for several seconds. Then, slowly, one person began to clap. Soon, everyone in the room was applauding, but this was not ordinary applause. People were standing up, clapping with tears streaming down their faces. "Bravo!" someone shouted from the back. "Amazing!" called out another voice. Sister Margaret sat at the piano bench, feeling overwhelmed by the response. She had not expected anything like this. She had just wanted to play one song and share a little bit of the music that lived in her heart. David walked over to the piano with tears in his eyes. "Sister, that was absolutely incredible," he said. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Sister Margaret smiled softly. "I taught myself when I was a child," she said. "I had not played in 60 years. I was not sure I would remember anything." The audience was still clapping and calling out compliments. People were wiping their eyes and hugging each other. The music had created a special moment that no one would ever forget. "Would you play another song for us?" David asked. "I think everyone would love to hear more." Sister Margaret looked out at all the hopeful faces. She could see that her music had brought joy to these people. She felt God telling her to continue sharing this gift. "I suppose I could play one more," she said with a gentle smile. The audience cheered and quickly sat back down. They could not believe they were going to hear more music from this remarkable nun. Sister Margaret thought for a moment about what to play next. Then she remembered a song that had always been special to her. It was "Amazing Grace," the same hymn the grandmother had played earlier. But Sister Margaret knew she could play it in her own way. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. But this version of "Amazing Grace" was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. Sister Margaret played it slowly at first, with deep feeling and emotion. Each note seemed to carry the weight of her 60 years of faith and service. As the song continued, she began to add variations and improvisations. She played the melody in different ways, sometimes high and delicate, sometimes low and powerful. Her left hand created beautiful harmonies while her right hand danced with the melody. People in the audience began to quietly sing along. Their voices blended with the piano music, creating a choir of community members united by the beautiful song. Even people who were not religious felt moved by the power of the music and the moment. Sister Margaret played for almost 10 minutes, creating new verses and variations that seemed to come from heaven itself. When she finally played the last notes, the silence that followed was filled with awe and wonder. This time the applause was even longer and louder than before. People were not just clapping, they were cheering and crying at the same time. Some audience members came forward to thank Sister Margaret personally. Linda, the woman who had talked to Sister Margaret earlier, was one of the first to approach. "Sister, you have an incredible gift," she said. "That was the most beautiful piano playing I have ever heard." The grandmother who had played earlier came over too. "You inspired me to be brave and play tonight," she told Sister Margaret. "But listening to you play has inspired me in a whole new way. You have shown me that music never dies, no matter how old we get." Young Emma, who had played violin at the beginning of the evening, walked up to Sister Margaret with her mother. "Sister, will you teach me to play piano like that?" she asked with wide, excited eyes. Sister Margaret laughed gently. "Child, what you heard tonight was 60 years of music that has been waiting to come out. But I would be happy to show you some simple songs if your mother agrees." More and more people came forward to speak with Sister Margaret. They thanked her for sharing her gift and told her how her music had touched their hearts. Some people said they had never experienced anything so moving in their entire lives. An older man named Robert approached with his wife. "Sister, my wife and I have been married for 45 years, he said. "We have heard a lot of music in our time, but what you played tonight was something special. It felt like you were playing straight from God's heart. Sister Margaret felt humbled by all the kind words. Music is a gift from God, she said. I'm just thankful that He allowed me to remember how to share it with all of you. As the evening wound down, David made an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all agree that tonight has been truly special. Sister Margaret has given us a gift we will never forget. He turned to Sister Margaret. Sister, I hope you know that you are welcome to come and play at any of our community events. In fact, I would like to invite you to be our featured performer at next month's concert. Sister Margaret felt surprised and honored. That is very kind of you, she said. I will certainly consider it. As people began to leave the community center, many stopped to speak with Sister Margaret one more time. Children asked for her autograph. Teenagers wanted to take pictures with her. Adults thanked her again and again for the beautiful music. Finally, the room was nearly empty. Sister Margaret sat at the piano for a few more minutes, just feeling the keys under her fingers. She could hardly believe what had happened that evening. David finished cleaning up and walked over to her. Sister, I have to ask you something, he said. Have you ever considered returning to music more regularly? What you have is truly extraordinary. Sister Margaret thought about his question. For 60 years, she had served God through caring for people and helping those in need. She had never thought that playing piano could also be a way to serve God. I have always believed that my calling was to help people through service and prayer, she said thoughtfully. But tonight I felt God's presence in the music. I saw how it touched people's hearts and brought them joy. Maybe music can be another way to serve, David smiled. I think you're right, sister. Music has the power to heal, to inspire, and to bring people together. What you did tonight was definitely a form of service. Sister Margaret stood up from the piano bench slowly. Her old body was tired, but her heart felt more alive than it had in years. She had rediscovered a part of herself that she thought was lost forever. Thank you for encouraging me to play tonight, she told David. If you had not been so kind and welcoming, I would never have found the courage. Thank you for sharing your incredible gift with us, David replied. You have given everyone here a memory they will treasure forever. As Sister Margaret walked slowly toward the door, she turned back to look at the piano one more time. Tomorrow she would return to her quiet life at the convent, but she knew that something had changed forever. The music was back in her life, and she felt that God had plans for her that she was only beginning to understand. Sister Margaret walked slowly back to the convent under the starry night sky. The cool evening air felt refreshing after the warmth of the community center. Her heart was still full of the music she had played and the joy she had shared with so many people. When she reached the convent, the other nuns were already asleep. Sister Margaret quietly made her way to her small room. She sat on her simple bed and looked at her hands in the moonlight coming through her window. These same hands had just created beautiful music that moved people to tears. She knelt down beside her bed to pray, as she had done every night for 60 years, but tonight her prayers were different. She thanked God for giving her the courage to play the piano again. She thanked Him for the gift of music that had been sleeping in her heart for so long. Dear God, she whispered, I do not understand why you brought music back into my life tonight, but I trust your plan. Please show me how to use this gift to serve you and help others. The next morning, Sister Margaret woke up early as she always did. For a moment she wondered if the previous night had been a dream. But when she looked at her fingers, she could still feel the memory of the piano keys. She went to morning prayers with the other nuns, then helped prepare breakfast in the convent kitchen. Sister Catherine, who was younger and had been Sister Margaret's friend for many years, noticed that something was different about her. Sister Margaret, you seem very happy this morning, Sister Catherine said as they set the table. Did something special happen yesterday? Sister Margaret smiled. I went to a music night at the community center last night. I ended up playing the piano. Sister Catherine stopped what she was doing and stared at her friend. You played piano? But Sister Margaret, I did not even know you could play. I used to play when I was young, before I became a nun, Sister Margaret explained. I had not touched a piano in 60 years, but last night I felt called to try again. Word spread quickly among the nuns that Sister Margaret could play piano. During their lunch meal, Mother Superior asked her about it. "Sister Margaret, is it true that you are a pianist?" Mother Superior asked kindly. "I played a little when I was young, Mother," Sister Margaret replied humbly. "Last night I played at a community event." "How wonderful," Mother Superior said. "You know, we have been looking for someone to play our old piano during our evening prayers. Sister Marie used to play, but her arthritis has become too painful. Would you be willing to help us?" Sister Margaret felt her heart leap. The convent had a piano that she had walked past every day for 60 years, but she had never thought about playing it. "I would be honored to help," she said, that evening. For the first time in decades, piano music filled the convent chapel during prayers. Sister Margaret played gentle hymns while the other nuns sang. The music added a new dimension to their worship that touched everyone's hearts. Meanwhile, word about Sister Margaret's incredible performance was spreading throughout the town. Linda, the woman from the community center, told her friends at work about the amazing nun who played piano. David told his family and posted about it on social media. By the end of the week, people were calling the community center asking if Sister Margaret would perform again. A local newspaper reporter wanted to write a story about her. The pastor of a nearby church asked if she would play for their Sunday service. Sister Margaret felt overwhelmed by all the attention. She had lived a quiet life for so long that she did not know how to handle being in the spotlight. David called the convent and asked to speak with Sister Margaret. "Sister, I have received so many calls about you," he said. "People want to hear you play again. Would you consider giving a small concert?" Sister Margaret thought carefully about his request. She prayed about it and talked with Mother Superior. "Sister Margaret," Mother Superior said, "I believe God has given you this gift for a reason. If playing music can bring joy to people and bring them closer to God, then perhaps this is part of your calling." Sister Margaret decided to give a small concert at the community center the following month. When David announced it, all the tickets were sold within 2 days. People from neighboring towns heard about the elderly nun who played piano like an angel and wanted to come hear her. As the concert date approached, Sister Margaret began to feel nervous again. This would be different from the spontaneous performance at the music night. This time, people were coming specifically to hear her play. What if she disappointed them? But every time she sat at the convent piano to practice, she felt the same peace and joy that had filled her heart that first night. The music flowed from her fingers naturally, as if it had never been away. Linda came to visit Sister Margaret at the convent a few days before the concert. "Sister, I wanted to thank you again for inspiring my daughter Emma," she said. "Since hearing you play, she has been practicing piano with new enthusiasm. She says she wants to play with feeling. Like you do?" "Music should always come from the heart," Sister Margaret told her. "Technical skill is important, but the most beautiful music comes when we play with love and emotion," Linda smiled. "Would you be willing to give Emma a few piano lessons? I know you must be very busy, but she would be so honored to learn from you." Sister Margaret thought about it. Teaching music could be another way to share her gift and help young people. "I would be happy to work with Emma," she said. Music is meant to be shared and passed on to the next generation. The night of the concert arrived. The community center was packed with people of all ages. Some had traveled from far away to hear the famous piano-playing nun. Local television news was there to record the event. Sister Margaret felt nervous as she looked out at the large audience, but she also felt excited. She had chosen a program of hymns and classical pieces that had always been special to her. When David introduced her, the audience applauded warmly. Sister Margaret walked slowly to the piano, said a silent prayer, and began to play. Her first piece was Ave Maria. From the very first notes, the audience knew they were hearing something extraordinary. Sister Margaret's playing was even more beautiful than it had been at the first music night. She had been practicing every day and her confidence had grown. For the next hour, Sister Margaret transported her listeners to a place of beauty and peace. She played Chopin, Beethoven, and Bach alongside traditional hymns. Each piece was performed with technical skill and deep emotional expression. During one particularly moving piece, Sister Margaret noticed that many people in the audience were crying. She realized that her music was touching their hearts in ways that went beyond entertainment. People were being healed, comforted, and inspired. When the concert ended, the audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted for several minutes. People were calling out, "Bravo!" and "Encore!" Sister Margaret felt humbled and grateful that God had allowed her to bring such joy to so many people. After the concert, dozens of people came forward to speak with her. A music teacher asked if Sister Margaret would consider giving master classes. A recording company wanted to make an album of her playing. Churches from across the state invited her to perform, but the conversation that touched Sister Margaret most was with a young man named Michael. He was about 20 years old and had tears in his eyes. "Sister," he said, "I want to thank you for tonight. I have been going through a very difficult time in my life. I lost my job and my girlfriend left me. I came here tonight because my grandmother wanted me to, but I did not want to come. Your music showed me that there is still beauty and hope in the world. You have given me strength to keep going." Sister Margaret felt tears come to her own eyes. This was why God had brought music back into her life. It was not about fame or recognition. It was about using her gift to touch hearts and help people in their times of need. As the weeks and months that followed, Sister Margaret's life changed dramatically. She began giving concerts regularly, always donating any money she received to charity. She started teaching piano lessons to children and adults who could not afford other teachers. Most importantly, she discovered that music was indeed a form of ministry. Through her playing, she could reach people who might never set foot in a church. She could comfort the grieving, inspire the hopeless, and bring communities together. Sister Margaret, who had spent 60 years serving God in quiet ways, had found that her greatest service was yet to come. The music that had been locked away in her heart for so long was now flowing freely, bringing healing and joy to everyone who heard it. And every night, as she knelt beside her bed to pray, Sister Margaret thanked God for the unexpected gift of a second chapter in her life filled with music, purpose, and the profound joy that comes from using one's talents to serve others. 6 months had passed since Sister Margaret's first concert, and her life had become busier than she ever imagined possible. Every week brought new invitations to play at different events. Churches, schools, and community centers all wanted the famous piano-playing nun to perform for them, but Sister Margaret was most excited about something special that was happening at the convent. With the money from her concerts, she had convinced Mother Superior to start a music program for local children who could not afford piano lessons. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, the convent's main hall filled with the sounds of children learning to play piano. Sister Margaret had found 3 old pianos at estate sales and had them repaired. Now 12 children between the ages of 6 and 16 came to learn music. One of her students was a shy boy named Tommy who lived with his grandmother. His family had very little money, but Tommy loved music more than anything. He would walk 2 miles from his house to the convent for his lessons. Rain or shine, Tommy's grandmother was the same woman who had played Amazing Grace at that first community music night. She often came with Tommy and would sit quietly in the corner watching Sister Margaret teach. Sometimes tears would come to her eyes as she watched her grandson discover the joy of making music. "Sister Margaret," Tommy said during one lesson, "when I play piano, I feel like I can talk to God. Is that normal?" Sister Margaret smiled warmly. "That is exactly how music should make you feel, Tommy. Music is one of God's most beautiful gifts to us. When we play with our hearts, we are having a conversation with heaven." Another student was a teenage girl named Lucy whose parents had recently divorced. Lucy was angry and sad most of the time, but when she sat at the piano, she found peace. Sister Margaret taught her to pour her emotions into the music instead of keeping them locked inside. "I hate everything right now," Lucy told Sister Margaret one day after a particularly difficult lesson. "Everything in my life is falling apart." "Play that feeling," Sister Margaret said gently. Show me your anger through the piano. Lucy began to play a piece with fierce intensity. Her fingers attacked the keys, and the music that came out was powerful and raw. When she finished, she was breathing hard, but her face looked calmer. How do you feel now? Sister Margaret asked. Better, Lucy admitted. It is like the piano took all my angry feelings and turned them into something that did not hurt so much. That is the healing power of music, Sister Margaret explained. When we cannot find words for our feelings, music can speak for us. The music program was growing so popular that Sister Margaret needed help. She asked David from the community center if he knew any other music teachers who might volunteer their time. David introduced her to Mrs. Rodriguez, a retired music teacher who had taught in public schools for 30 years. Mrs. Rodriguez was excited to help with the program and began teaching guitar and singing classes alongside Sister Margaret's piano lessons. Together, they created something wonderful. Children who had never thought they could make music were now playing instruments and singing together. The convent hall that had been quiet for so many years was now filled with laughter, music, and joy every week. One day, a reporter from the city newspaper came to write a story about Sister Margaret's music program. The reporter was a young woman who seemed tired and stressed from her busy job. Sister Margaret, the reporter said, can you tell me how this program started? As Sister Margaret told the story, she noticed that the reporter kept looking at the piano with longing in her eyes. Do you play music? Sister Margaret asked. The reporter looked embarrassed. I used to play piano when I was little, but I stopped when I got busy with school and work. I always meant to start again, but life just got in the way. It is never too late to come back to music, Sister Margaret said kindly. Would you like to try playing something while you are here? The reporter hesitated, then nodded. She sat at the piano and slowly played a simple piece she remembered from childhood. Her playing was rusty, but the joy on her face was unmistakable. I forgot how good this feels, the reporter said with tears in her eyes. I have been so focused on my career that I forgot about the things that actually make me happy. When the newspaper article was published, it touched many hearts. The headline read, 82-year-old nun brings music back to life for children and adults. The story included photos of Sister Margaret teaching the children and a beautiful description of how music was healing and inspiring people of all ages. After the article came out, even more people wanted to support the music program. A local piano store donated 2 more pianos. A group of retired musicians volunteered to help teach. The mayor of the town announced that the city would provide funding to expand the program. But the most surprising response came from a phone call that Sister Margaret received one evening. The voice on the other end was that of a young man who sounded very nervous. Sister Margaret, he said, my name is Robert, and I read about you in the newspaper. I hope you do not mind me calling, but I really need to talk to someone. Of course, child, Sister Margaret said gently. How can I help? You? Robert explained that he was 25 years old and had been struggling with depression for several years. He had lost his job recently and was feeling hopeless about his future. I used to play piano when I was in high school, Robert said. Reading about your story made me remember how music used to make me feel better when I was sad. Do you think it could help me now? Sister Margaret felt her heart go out to this young man. Music has the power to heal wounds that we cannot see, she told him. Would you like to come to the convent and play our piano? Sometimes we just need to reconnect with the things that brought us joy in the past. Robert came the next day. He was thin and pale, and his hands shook as he sat at the piano. But when he began to play, something beautiful happened. The music seemed to lift the heavy sadness from his shoulders, even if just for a little while. I feel lighter, Robert said after playing for 30 minutes. I have not felt this peaceful in months. Sister Margaret began meeting with Robert once a week. She taught him new pieces and encouraged him to express his feelings through music. Slowly, Robert began to heal. The music gave him hope and strength to face his problems. As word spread about Sister Margaret's work with people who were struggling, more adults began coming to the convent for music therapy sessions. She worked with people dealing with grief, anxiety, loneliness, and depression. Her piano became a tool for healing hearts and minds. One evening, as Sister Margaret was finishing her practice time, Mother Superior came to speak with her. "Sister Margaret," Mother Superior said, "I want you to know how proud we all are of the work you are doing. You have brought so much good into the world through your music." "I never imagined that playing piano could be a form of ministry," Sister Margaret replied. "For 60 years I thought serving God meant only helping people in practical ways. Now I see that touching people's hearts through music is just as important." Mother Superior smiled. "You have reminded all of us that God can use any gift for His glory. Your music is reaching people who might never come to church or ask for help in traditional ways." As the months continued, Sister Margaret's influence grew far beyond her small town. Videos of her playing were shared on the internet, and people from around the world sent letters, thanking her for inspiring them to return to music or to pursue their dreams despite their age. A music school in the nearby city invited her to give a master class to their advanced students. These young pianists thought they knew everything about music, but Sister Margaret taught them something they had never learned in their formal training. "Technique is important," she told the students, "but the most beautiful music comes from a heart that has experienced life. Do not just play the notes. Tell a story with every piece. Share your joys, your sorrows, your hopes, and your fears through the music." One of the students, a girl who had been playing piano for 15 years, raised her hand. "Sister Margaret, how did you play so beautifully after not practicing for 60 years? Sister Margaret thought carefully about her answer. "The music never really left me," she said. "It was sleeping in my heart, waiting for the right moment to wake up. When you truly love music, it becomes part of your soul. Time cannot erase that kind of love." The master class was recorded and later shared with music students around the world. Sister Margaret's simple wisdom about playing with emotion and sincerity inspired thousands of young musicians to approach their art with greater depth and feeling. Back at the convent, Sister Margaret continued her weekly lessons with the local children. Watching them grow as musicians brought her incredible joy. Tommy, the shy boy who walked 2 miles for lessons, was now confident enough to play solos in front of the whole group. Lucy, the angry teenager, had learned to channel her emotions into beautiful, expressive playing, but perhaps the most rewarding part of Sister Margaret's new life was seeing how music was bringing the whole community together. Parents who had never spoken to each other before became friends while waiting for their children's lessons. The children from different backgrounds and economic situations formed friendships based on their shared love of music.